everyone. This is Joel McLeod coming back to you for the 905 Roundup. And it turns out I found someone who hasn't been here in about a month. Just showed up. Roland, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm still alive. The ghost of Christmas past, or something like that. I don't know.
do you still remember how to do this? Or we still? Or do you need a Coles Notes version?
Yeah, probably. I need a Coles Notes version of whatever the hell has been going on in this province since I left. I went and everything's gone to the dogs. What on earth have you let happen, Joel?
Yeah, sorry, my bad. I took my eye off the ball for a minute, and everything kind of went topsy turvy. Yeah, we. So it turns out that despite being told numerous times that we're not going to see privatized healthcare in this province, we're now seeing privatized healthcare in this province. It's been something we've been wanting to talk about for a while on this podcast, to get a sense of the state of the healthcare system, and kind of the fear that we were all worrying about was it finally happened. The earlier this month, the provincial PC government said that they were going to allow for-profit surgery centers to take the hip and knee surgeries, those kind of high volume but relatively routine surgeries. They're going to start charging them, which, I mean, on the face of it, it makes sense, right? Like have specialty centers that are geared towards these high, like the aging boomer population that needs these surgeries to be mobile and functional and all that stuff. It makes sense. Have dedicated surgery centers to handle it. What people are wary about is that asterisk where it says for profit. And we've been seeing I've been seeing interviews with Sylvia Jones, the Minister of Health, being asked flat out, like, are Ontarians going to be coerced into getting an upgrade? Are we going to get like the Cadillac version of knees and hip surgery or hip replacements, as opposed to the generic version that you and I could get under our OHIP card? Is that wrong? I don't know. I think it's unsettling for a lot of Canadians, to the idea that somebody can go with their credit card or their checkbook and they literally get a better product than the rest of us schlubs who we can't afford a $10,000 hip or a $5,000 knee mechanism.
I mean, one of the things that the Canadian health system had going for it was that that everybody uses the same system. If you're a millionaire, if you're dirt poor, you're using the same doctors and the same hospitals, and you're getting the same care. And that means, part of the logic of that is that the people, if everybody's using the same system, everybody's trying to get the best out of that system. When you go to a two-tier system, well, immediately the most wealthy, which includes politicians, people like that, are going to bail out. And that's the system that I was very familiar with in Britain. And Britain has the NHS, and most people are very proud of it, but it also has private healthcare running by the side. And increasingly, guess what? More and more people kind of opt out in the NHS, and it undermines it. It's all part of the slippery slope. And this isn't by accident. This is by design. The most... and I haven't been because I've been away, I have not been on top of this story as much as I'd like. Well, but the one quote that sort of leapt out at me as really sort of summing the whole thing up was Doug Ford in his inimitable style, saying, well, the status quo doesn't work, so we've got to do something different. Well, yeah, the status quo doesn't work because it's designed not to work. You made it that way.
Well, I would argue it's not that it was designed not to work. It was underfunded.
Well, it's underfunded deliberately into oblivion. So we say, oh, well, look, it doesn't work. We need to get rid of it. It's deliberately undermining confidence in the system to say that, we have to do this for profit. Yeah. And I simply don't get the maths involved, because right now we have a system where we pay out of our tax for a healthcare system and we don't have to pay for corporate profits and for shareholders.
Well,
If you do it for privately, we're still paying, but now we have to pay an additional 50% to go into the pocket of whoever it is who runs the business. And I've seen this with my own eyes of what private healthcare looks like, and it sucks.
Well, here's the thing: we did have. I mean, this isn't entirely new. I don't think we can say that we're shocked by this, because we've seen this kind of this mission creep towards this since the Ford government was reelected back in the springtime. I mean, if you recall, nurses were protesting. They were underfunded. A lot of them were quitting to go find jobs in the private sector. That for-profit nursing. Which the idea would be, you'd be hired out to one or two clients to take care of their specialty needs that pay out of pocket. But then we saw that to save the system, this provincial government was hiring those same nurses to come back into the public hospitals that they had just quit, and we're paying twice as much for them, because there's all that administrative cost that goes on top of just the hourly wage that went to the nurse. And I sit there and say, I mean, we talked about this, like, in what world is that considered good business? And that's what I think is going to happen here, is that we're going to have I don't see how this is going to save us money or save us resources, where you have specialty clinics focused on hip, knee, and those routine surgeries that really should be done at like a bargain basement deal, because you could just, like, essentially the public system would buy them on bulk, really. But we're not doing that now, because now we got to pay for it, the administrative costs and the all that superfluous bureaucratic stuff that sits on top of it. We're just going to end up paying more for somebody to get milk money out of it, and I don't see us, the Ontario taxpayer, benefiting from it. I don't see our health insurance, our health budget diminishing over the next 4 years. If anything, I'm predicting it's going to go up, and we're not going to see demonstrative wait times going down, because that's just not how for-profit works.
No, it doesn't. I mean, we look at the US system. The US system is by no measure better than our system. It's just much less fair. It provides very good service to some people if you can afford it, and absolutely abysmal service to the rest. As a result, American life expectancy is lower than the rest of the Western world, and it's dropping. I mean, it's shameful, but across the Western world, life expectancy is dropping for the first time ever, I believe probably in history. We are actually living for shorter periods than the previous generation. But in the US, that is particularly marked, and it's because of their shitty healthcare system, which prioritizes profit over everything else. But this is this government. This is the Ford government. This is the way they think. They are dogmatic profiteers. They are robber barons at the court of the king of whatever the hell it is. And this is where we're, and the key thing is we're going to talk about three subjects today. This is the first one, and each one of those three, we're going to say at the end of the day, no one asked for this. No one voted for this. This was not in any platform. This wasn't what we voted for last year when the election came around. We quite the opposite. There was no talk of privatizing healthcare. There was no talk of attacking the Greenbelt, which we're going to come to. There was no talk of forcing massive property tax increases because of deals being done with developers on the sly. These guys are crooks, and
I just worry that we're going to end up in a situation where we're going to drive away the nursing staffs that we require for our, regardless, private or public staff, just because I don't.
Well, why would you work here? To be treated like shit, to come through COVID, to be rewarded with a 1% pay increase at a time of 10% interest. Why the hell would you want to go into a profession like that?
Well, I don't, because I don't see these for-profit sector. Like, that's the thing. If they're for-profit, you only get, you can either make a profit one of two ways, charging an awful lot of money. And here's the thing, it's supposed to be all coming from the public purse, so that purse can't be wide open. So I think there's a pretty low ceiling on that end of the equation. The alternative is you slash your labor costs, because everything else is a fixed cost. The cost of the scalpel is fixed. The cost of an operating room is fixed. The cost of sterilization materials is all a fixed cost. The only thing that's variable is your labor. So you're telling me that you're going to have all these nurses that are being paid spit by the Ford government currently is going to make a fortune privately? I doubt it. I think what'll happen is you're going to see them move over. They'll still get paid the same, if not, and then you'll start seeing probably a little bit less. They'll start seeing wages cut, because, to my knowledge, those for-profit spots don't have SEIU in them yet. Maybe they do. I'm open to be corrected on that one, but I don't think they're unionized. So I bet you draw as many of them in as you can with the promise of, okay, we'll get a fair wage, and then now we're going to cut your wages. We'll cut them because that's how we'll make more profit. That's the only way that they can make a profit in here. In which case, why would you? I mean, here's the thing: like the private sector has included, on the whole, has not included in. You need to pay people more to keep them happy, to keep them around. I don't see why healthcare industry would be any different. They'll try and slash that wage as low as they possibly can in order to maximize the profit. Plain and simple.
Right, and they're answerable only to one thing, and that is the shareholders, the owners of the business or the shareholders of the business. They have to deliver profits. Profit is, by definition, money that otherwise it would be used on anything else that is now simply to go into the pocket of investors. And that's fine in a capitalist society, and we live in a capitalist society for better or worse. But in the realm of healthcare, there's a reason why basically the entire Western world, with the exception of the USA, went away from a for-profit model for healthcare, because it doesn't bloody well work.
No.
Yeah, I mean, sure, there are different systems, and there are hybrids of private and public, and Canada is already a hybrid of public and private in many ways. But the bottom line was that everybody got treated the same. Everybody had access to the same treatment, regardless of whether you were Ted Rogers or Mrs. Smith. And that's going to be thrown away now. When we're talking about paying $50 or $70 just to talk to a medical professional, which is, I happen to know some people recently who've lost their GP because of someone cutting back on hours, a local GP surgery, and basically people being told now that if they already have significant health conditions, that they will not be picked up by another GP because well, frankly, they're too expensive to treat. And they get all kinds of excuses. Well, we don't think you're the right kind of GP. We're the right GP for you, which is horseshit, because a GP is by nature general practitioner. It doesn't matter if they're
here's the thing. If anything COVID has taught us is that human beings are expensive investments to build. Like we're not profitable. That's what I don't get about for-profit healthcare, is that human beings are not profit. There's no profit margin on us. If we walk into a clinic, we are a black hole of money. Like to properly treat us, to make us 100% whole and cured and better and coming out brand spanking new, we are not a wise investment. Just I've yet to see it. Like, look at the long-term care home fiasco. To treat somebody with the dignity that you expect a human being to be treated, especially in the sunset years of their life, it costs a lot to do that, and there's no profit on that. There's just not. You cannot like that's it. I can't see any business model unless you start cutting corners or you start upselling to ridiculous amounts of money that you can maximize a profit off of human being. We are just a bad business model.
And just to compare to UK system, I have some experience of long-term care in the UK, and visiting for-profit long-term care locations and non-profit. I was fortunate enough to get my mother into a non-profit place that was absolutely fantastic. They paid their staff well. That was well designed to, as it happens, whether by luck or by judgment, was well designed to control COVID without requiring people to be locked in their rooms for weeks on end. And where the staff were, not going to 5 other locations that they had to work to make a decent living. The place where my mother was before was a for-profit location with nursing staff on minimum wage who were, I say nursing staff, they were barely qualified to give a pill, to be honest. I mean that with the greatest respect to them. I saw it with my own eyes. They didn't know how to do it. My mother was paying a decent amount of money for a service that was terrible because all the money certainly wasn't going to the nurses. It was going to someone else further up the chain. I went to a for-profit long-term care place where people were screaming naked in their beds. Believe it, I'm not making this up. I'm not exaggerating. People with advanced Alzheimer's just ignored and abandoned. This is what happens when you turn up at a long-term care facility without making an appointment first. That's your for-profit healthcare for you. Absolutely appalling beyond belief. It's something out of a Dickens novel. And this is what we're getting into now. Well, we've seen it in Canada already, obviously, with the scandal that happened during COVID. But it makes me so angry that we have these fatheads like Doug Ford defending this and suggesting that this is any kind of answer, when the answer is proper investment in healthcare that everybody can obtain equally, regardless of background. And it's a system that's been proven to work, but which they, for whatever reason, cannot abide and want to destroy. And it just makes me mad.
It works if you fund it. Let's call it a break there. We'll move on to our next topic. Okay, and we're back. Which the other news that you missed out while you were off tittering around in on the other side of the world, Roland, is Hazel McCallion is back in the news. Hurricane Hazel is back in, and she's now in charge of the Greenbelt. So all is well. No problems there.
Well, if you thought there was a phrase where lunatics taking over the asylum is the correct one, that seems like the right one to use. Here's the person who she's the queen of sprawl. I mean, if anybody's the queen of sprawl, it's Hazel McCallion. This is the person who created modern Mississauga, the city that everybody likes to say, I don't want to live there. And with greatest respect to Mississauga, and I think many people live there and are very happy living there. But it's the archetype of bad Ontario urban design, and of sprawl and of lack of density and of all the things we want to get away from. And she built it, and here we are. Well, let's put her in charge of the Greenbelt. Fantastic.
Well, I mean, she's So the Greenbelt, the name escapes me, but basically the agency in charge of looking over the Greenbelt and advising the province on how to move ahead with it and what have you. She's the chair of it, because the previous chair and a number of people who are on that board resigned over the current government's decisions over it. They said, no, your decisions are harmful to the Greenbelt. If anything, they're threatening to destroy it. They proved to be right. And so what happens is Doug Ford went to an ally in Hazel McCallion to come in and say, oh, great, you chair it up. And she's coming in saying, hey, what they did with opening up for development, that was just what we needed. Needless to say, I think you and I both agree she's 100% wrong. It was not needed. We've had numerous people on this podcast who think it wasn't needed. I would just say this. I tweeted this out on my own personal account the other day, that I think whatever reputation she has in this province as kind of an elder statesman, a voice that carries weight, is going to be toast from now on, because basically now she's tied in with Doug Ford in terms of this the as a cover for his Greenbelt policies, because I don't think he's just going to stop with this one plot of land that was open up, especially with the ongoing investigation from the Integrity Commissioner as well as the Auditor General, and now possibly the OPP, into what happened with this Greenbelt deal. To say, oh, it was the right call, I don't think I think she's gonna regret those words. I really do. I think she's gonna come back and say, I should have kept my mouth shut on that one, because everything about this agreement or this plan stinks. There's something happened here. We're gonna find out what it is, I'm hoping, in due time. She's gonna come back and regret saying it was the right thing to do, because I think we're gonna find out that it was not necessary. It was done entirely behind closed doors, and it was done without the best intentions to the Greenbelt or to Ontarians or the 905ers in mind.
Yeah, I mean, at least two of the major Ontario parties have had this love affair with Hazel McCallion, that she could do no wrong. You know, she would get wheeled out by the Liberals, and now she gets wheeled out by the PCs.
Yeah.
And I guess it was because, for whatever reason, in Mississauga, she could do no wrong. She led this charmed life despite, serious allegations of conflicts of interest with her own family members and development in the city of Mississauga. And certainly, putting that to one side, whatever those allegations might have been, and then whether they were right, wrong, or whatever, all you need to do is look at modern Mississauga and say, my God, whoever was in charge of development there for the last 50 years really made a fucking disaster of it. Who was in charge? Well, guess what? It was Hazel McCallion. Her time has come and gone. We need to stop defending people like bloody Hazel McCallion and Don Cherry and these dinosaurs of Canadian culture who get away with absolute bloody murder because they got some kind of charm or other. I don't have ever been able to see. Yeah, I mean, I'm coming back firing on all cylinders here from my trip.
Yeah, it was supposed to be a relaxing vacation there.
Roland. Yeah, it didn't work. It didn't take.
Well, welcome to Canada.
But I mean, yeah, it's absolute madness. It's absolute madness. But I mean, the PCs think we're such schmucks, and they're probably right. We probably are just that big schmucks. Oh, Hazel McCallion, yeah, good old Hazel, yeah, she knows what's what. I mean, it's absolute lunacy. 101-year-old woman who was past her sell-by date sometime in the 80s, if not before, getting wheeled out as the face of the Greenbelt Council.
Well, what gets me though is, I don't know if you had a chance to listen to our last episode. Our last episode we had on Michael Twigg of the Smart Prosperity Institute on to talk about. I thought it was an innovative way of looking at the Greenbelt as a way of actually putting money into it. To actually invest in the status quo as a means of conservation, not as a means of development. And I was thinking, how innovative would that have been for, spoilers, our next story that we're going to talk about is about the municipalities of 905. But how great would it have been for those municipalities to invest our tax dollars directly into the Greenbelt, get returns out of it that could go into, public transit, parkland, recreation, all those things that make communities what they are, and avoid what will be our next story. I don't want to spoil it entirely, but it's like this out of the box thinking that we are not getting from our current government. And quite frankly, I know conservatives fear change, but putting Hazel McCallion into the Greenbelt Council it's kind of like going literally like just saying, let's go as far back in time as we can to get outdated ideas to solve modern day problems. It's a recipe for disaster, in my opinion.
Yeah, and this I mean, it's the second Ford government, starting last year, has proven itself to be fundamentally different from the first one. The first one was just useless and incompetent, and somewhat lacking in confidence. And then COVID came along, and this one has just taken, in the last 6 months, 9 months, they've just taken the gloves off on everything. And again, this is a really important point. And it's a point that just doesn't get the attention it deserves. Nobody voted for this. Yeah, sure, we voted for a Conservative government. Or, actually a very small percentage of us did, but whatever. That's
17% apparently.
Yeah, under the rules that we have, we voted for a Conservative government. We have this principle that goes back hundreds of years that a government runs on a platform. In the UK, it's called a manifesto. Here, we call it a platform. And the items in that platform are voted on. It's a referendum, basically, on those items. And sure, no one ever reads the platforms. Very few people do anyway. And sure, it's all a bit of a joke that we've let be like that. But this government just didn't even bother having a platform of any kind, is now governing just on the basis of, well, we won, so screw you guys. No, I mean, there have been legal cases about this kind of stuff, and the fact that you can't just throw out the things that are in your platform. But God knows the Canadian legal system isn't going to do anything about it. No. The opposition aren't even going to make it stick as a criticism, because the opposition is such a waste of space currently. Leaderless and inept. I mean, I guess the NDP actually do have a leader. Has she done anything yet? I don't know. Did she do anything while I was away?
I saw her tweet out and put out a few statements here and there, but yeah, I mean, that's the thing, is we're not seeing I mean, maybe that's a story for another episode, because I don't think we have time to go down that rabbit hole tonight, honestly.
I mean, we desperately need a decent opposition. I don't care what party it comes from. I mean, frankly, I prefer it came from both parties working together, or all three parties, including the Greens, working together. Currently, the ineptitude, the kind of behaving like this is business as usual, it's just depressing beyond belief. They need to get the damn acts together. The province, as we know, is being dismantled at just record speed.
Yeah.
I've lived under a bunch of governments. A lot of them I didn't like very much. I don't remember seeing stuff like this before, and just the utter contempt for the normal way of doing things.
Well, let's move on to our final story, because I think that contempt is going to carry on to the next story, and that's basically what we've all said is going to happen out of the Greenbelt movement is, or lack thereof, I guess, is happening. It's the CBC reported earlier this month that it looks like a lot of the municipalities in the GTA are going to be hiking our property taxes, not because they want to, but because, again, in Bill 23, the bill that opened up the Greenbelt for developers, there was also a caveat in there that the development charges on new works were waived. There was no more development charges. Those development charges are required by GTA 905 municipalities in their budget, in their operating budget, to cover things like public transit, parks and recreation, services, etc., infrastructure maintenance, all the stuff that goes into the operation of an actual municipality. A lot of that comes from these development charges. That's no longer the case. So municipalities, of course, will have scrambling, saying, well, how do we fix this shortfall in our operating costs? How do we pay our staffers to go clean, pick up the garbage, to go operate pools and hockey rinks and all that stuff? The answer is property tax hikes. It appears majority are looking towards it. The CBC has on the confirmed municipalities that are going to be facing tax increase in the 905. Stouffville, they're projecting 52% over 5 years, beginning with 20% in 2024. Newmarket, they're projecting 5 to 15%. Aurora, a projected increase of 6%. Brampton, 9%. Mississauga, 8 to 10% increase. The big news is Vaughan is projected to see a tax increase of 77 to 88%. And this was confirmed in the article East Gwillimbury. This is, I can't believe this number, 100%. 100% tax increase. The result, the rest of in the article, a lot of the other municipalities, things like Caledon, Halton Hills, Burlington, or Oakville, they're still crunching the numbers. And Oshawa, Clarington, those places, they're still trying to figure out what their budget is going to look like. But when they went to Doug Ford and Mr. Steve Clark to ask, like, what do you think of this? The response is, oh, it's these cities have been hoarding cash away for years and they're just being greedy. No, they haven't been hoarding cash. It's called a reserve fund. This is fund that is meant for emergencies. This is when flooding occurs, when disaster strikes, or when a particular crisis hits a municipality, you dip into the reserve fund to pay for these kind of things. It's not meant to dip in to pay somebody's salary.
Yeah, and it's what cities do instead of having deficits. Cities aren't legally allowed to run deficits. They're not allowed to go into debt. They can't do what the province and the federal government does. So they have to have reserve funds so that, when something comes along. Now, many of those cities, and maybe they're the ones with the higher ranges that we're seeing, have already been dipping into reserve funds over the years. I know Burlington's been dipping into its reserve funds quite a bit recently in the last 4 years. It'd be interesting to see what kind of numbers come out there. It's certainly something that councillors have put pressure on to raid from time to time. But yeah, the idea that reserve funds are just sort of stores of cash that the cities are just sitting on for no good reason is I think it's a lie, and they know it's a lie. They're not actually that stupid. They know fine and well how cities work.
Steve Clark was a mayor.
Yeah, and they think we're that stupid. And again, unfortunately, they're probably right. We are that stupid that we will swallow this garbage. It's very depressing. But I really think this is something the progressive parties need to get their head around and to make it core of their kind of messaging. This kind of stuff, this is a subsidy to big business. What's happened in cutting of development charges is they have taken charges that developers had to pay to the cities to pay for things like drains, tarmac on the roads, all the stuff that you have to have for any new development,
right?
Which obviously, who else is supposed to pay for it but the people who are building the damn buildings? I mean, makes sense, right? Sure, it gets passed on to people buying the houses, but they're the ones who are going to be using it. Makes sense, right? Well, that has now been downloaded to the taxpayer. That is what we call a subsidy. That is a subsidy going now into additional profits for the fatheads who run the big development companies, who are already doing just fine building their luxury condos left, right, and center, and building no affordable housing whatsoever anywhere ever. Again, I'm sick to death of talking about this because it's just, it's the same thing week in, week out. But I mean, what else are we supposed to say other than point this out? It's an absolute bloody disgrace. It's basically theft out of our pockets to subsidize big business that doesn't need the help.
See, what you just said there is so striking because it's such hypocrisy on the part of this conservative government. Is that, how many times do you hear from a conservative or the PC government, respect for the taxpayer, and the taxpayer is so overtaxed and they're so overburdened on this, and we need to get the taxpayer break. And okay, that's all well and good. We're all I think we're all in favor of that. This is a 3-card Monty shuffle happening in front of our eyes. That, oh no, it's where's the respect for the taxpayer now when all these municipalities now have to raise property taxes, make our lives that much harder to harder to deal with. We're going to see like higher mortgage payments and higher rent payments now down the road because there's no controls on that as well. The cost of living is just going to go up under this government, and this government keeps saying, "Oh, we're trying to give you a break." Like, where's the break?
Yeah. Again, who asked for this?
Nobody would have asked for this
other than the developers themselves. Who asked for this? Who asked for the Greenbelt to be attacked? Nobody. Who asked for developers to get everything they ever asked for? Only the developers.
Right.
Who asked for the rotting corpse of Hazel McCallion to be dug out of whatever place it was hiding and to be dragged into the forefront again? I'm sorry to be kind of crude about it, but for God's sake, it's a metaphor, and it's like she's well past the sell-by date. We do not need. It's just an insult to all of us. Who asked for our healthcare system to be screwed over like this? Nobody asked for it. This is what happens when you let someone be elected without a goddamn platform. And ultimately, the opposition parties take a big part of the blame for this because they've done such a goddamn shitty job of holding these people to account.
Yep.
Of pointing out things like, this is a subsidy, this is hypocrisy. We are paying money that goes directly from our pockets into the pockets of big business. When minimum wage increases get cancelled, what happens? We still end up paying for the people who are underpaid to stay alive. What happens is that instead of their employers paying the damn wages, we have to make up the shortfall. Again, we are subsidizing big business. Again, the opposition parties have completely failed to make that point. That every time that the Conservatives put the boot into the little guy, someone has to end up paying, and it ain't the bloody big business that's paying it.
Well, here's the thing: we get you mentioned the wage. Wages haven't met up with inflation. I remember back when Premier Kathleen Wynne was in office, and she said we're going to do a wage increase to $15 an hour, and every small business owner said, "You're going to drive me out of business. I can't afford to pay my workers this rate." I was working at the time, and I saw the wages go up. But you know what? Nobody went out of business. Prices kind of went up a little bit. They inched up a bit to cover the cost, but all in all, the sky did not fall. It was not the collapse of our economy that businesses want us to say it was. I look currently right now, wages are not keeping up with inflation. People are finding it's harder and harder to pay for $40 salad kits at Loblaws in the province. We have people like Galen Wesson making 20%, 30% profit on food, which is far beyond the rate of inflation. I'm not buying that's inflation that's jacking up these prices. Yet we're not seeing any pressure to raise the wages of workers in Loblaws or on the front lines in any other place that we require so much. We're not seeing a wage increase for nurses and healthcare workers in that regard. It's hypocrisy to the nth degree when anybody says, can I have what's owed to me, you're slapped down and say you're lazy, you're just wanting entitlements, get back in order, get back in line. And the rich and powerful just plunder our pockets. And that's what's happening here, is that this money, developers going to walk away, pocket what should have been development charges going into municipalities to pay for vital operating costs. Instead, the price of homes will not drop, is my prediction. Price of homes won't drop considerably. They'll retain all that money in terms of profits for the developers, and we're still going to be met with far behind the housing numbers that we need. Housing prices will not drop to a more affordable level. Meanwhile, your mortgage and rent will increase because your municipality chances are is going to be raising your property taxes. Oh, and by the way, your wage and your salary probably is not going to be keeping up with those demands, because this government will not want to put the burden onto businesses to meet that demand. This government is, each action that it does shows more and more it is not for the people. It is for their people. The opposition needs to get their act together and hold this and start putting the screws to Doug Ford and these people and his clowns. And it's not just this government. You got to go after the Galen Westons and the Ted Rogers in this province, who are, and all the developers who are just profiting hand over fist on this inflation and passing the costs on to the rest of us. Because the economy will not stand for it. It cannot operate this way if people cannot afford to spend, cannot afford the basic necessities of life. Forget all the frills of, oh, you want to have a electric car manufacturing empire here in Ontario. It's not going to happen if people can't afford the cars, because they have to choose between $40 salads or paying their mortgage. Doug, that's economics 101.
Yeah, we have a government that doesn't believe in electric cars. It isn't going to, has put back development of electric vehicles by at least 5 years because of the cancellation of the various subsidies that existed. If you thought in 2018 that you were going to vote for Doug Ford because, hey, the Liberals are corrupt and dirty or whatever, then I challenge you to find the millionaire Liberal out of that government who got rich on any kind of corruption. But I can point to a bunch of them in the PC ranks. And governments have been around for a long time. Yeah, they make mistakes, but I mean, my goodness, the hatred and the vitriol that's directed at the Kathleen Wynne for what exactly, I never quite worked out. If we're talking about a couple of gas plants that were actually done by her predecessor, that those gas plants at the end of the day were built. They're still, they're actually out there. They're just not in the place that they started off being built. They weren't just shoveling cash into the pockets of their buddies nakedly without any attempt at hiding it. No industry was just given carte blanche to do what the hell it wants, in the way that the development industry has been given carte blanche by this. And it's not going to bring down house prices one iota, because why would developers want to reduce the amount of profits that they're making? They've already got years and years and years of approvals sitting in their pockets, approvals that have been given to them by cities across the province, thousands and thousands of acres just waiting to be built on, and they're not building on it. Why not? Because there's no goddamn point when all it would do was reduce the cost of housing. It's that there is no blockage on building in the province other than the developers. We've said it before. We will need to keep on saying it because no one else is saying it. The damn opposition isn't saying it because they're so inept they can't seem to get any kind of messaging out. No, the bright, shiny new leader of the NDP, she's been leader now for a couple of months. Why the hell am I not hearing from her? Why isn't she getting her face on the front of the Star or wherever it is, screaming blue murder about what's happening in this province? We've got various candidates putting their names forward for the OLP. I hope to hell they do better than the new leader of the NDP has done in the first few weeks. And I'm not having a go. I want them to do well. I don't care what party. I don't care what leader. I want them to do well. They have to do well. But it's just incredibly depressing to see week after week nothing coming out with any level of effectiveness against this attack on everything.
Well, welcome back to the fun. It's going to be fun next few years.
Been in Britain and everything's Britain. It's fantastic in Britain. It certainly is not. I mean, I could go on at length about all the terrible things happening there too. But I mean, I'm just so frustrated at the inability.
Conservatives are bad ideas.
Yeah, and just the I just remember at previous times in my life when governments doing bad stuff, the opposition at least was kicking up a stink about it. Sure, the unions did a good job with the teachers issue a few months, with the education workers issue a few months ago. The unions did, they kind of showed what can be done with some decent leadership. But the Greenbelt issue isn't getting nearly the traction it needs to. We should have people bloody shutting down the cities with this stuff. If a couple of fat farmers can close down the entire bloody country, for God's sake, can we not do the same about the Greenbelt?
All right. Well,
who else can I insult before we get finished today?
Let's pull the plug on it for this one. Thanks very much, everyone for listening. We'll be back next week with more 905er. Bye-bye.
All right.
That's it for this episode of the 905er. Thank you for listening. As always, you can send us your feedback, thoughts, and concerns or ideas for future episodes to our email, info@905er.ca. We love to hear from you. You can help us keep the 905er going by financially supporting us through Patreon as well as PayPal. Visit us at 905er.ca and click on the support tab. As well, links are in the show notes for your convenience. Lastly, you can find us on social media. Search for _905er on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. So long for now. See you next time.
Looking to make the most out of this life and optimize your personal wellness? Then check out the Natural Man Podcast. Join me, host Mike C., as we explore all areas of human wellness, physical, mental, and emotional. Learn strategies to optimize your own well-being and be in the driver's seat of your own health. Remember, your doctor works for you. Learn biohacks, neurohacks, ways to improve sleep, and ways to optimize your body and your mind. Check us out on Apple, Spotify, the Fountain app, and at naturalmanpodcast.com.